Like to call this meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes for the October 10th meeting, in which I was not present.
Make a motion, we approve them.
I guess we're gonna approve it because I wasn't there.
You can still vote to approve.
All right, I vote to approve it. All right. You want to take these in order? Oh, that's right. Development of priorities for inclusion of strategic plan. Is that anything like the Soviet 5-year plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we're going to begin now. This is kind of a new twist this year, kind of a surprise to the committee tonight. Spoke with Ms. Kamek concerning this year's process for establishing our strategic planning goals. And one of the ideas that we discussed was, instead of showing up to a strategic planning retreat cold, if you will, we thought it would be a good idea to begin those discussions at the committee level. Allow the committees to discuss the goals for the upcoming year based on their respective topics, the subject of their committee. So I'd like to, if we could, begin discussions of our goals for next year. Obviously, we're still proceeding with the previous year's goals. I've sent a couple of updates out. We've still got some time to complete those, and I'll present a follow-up report on those goals later in the budget year during the strategic planning meeting. But for the meantime, I'd like for you guys to kind of open your minds up a little bit, and let's begin talking about goals for the upcoming year. The suggested process is basically to gather some primary goals, 3 or so, 2 or 3 goals from each committee that we'll bring back to the full Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee during a strategic planning session, or excuse me, to the council during a strategic planning session for affirmation and development of an overall strategic plan for the upcoming year, in years, if you will. I want to make sure that as we start establishing these goals, we begin thinking about the community impact that they have. Last year, we, whether it was rightfully so or not, had a lot of discussions about internal processes and organizational changes that we're working through, some facility changes that were really more internal. I want this year to make sure that as we set our goals, we're looking at overall community benefit and changes as well. Whether that's through reduction of litter by a certain %, or whether that's improvement of our ISO is at 4, but just an example, an improvement of our ISO to a 3 or something like that. So as staff starts to develop their work plan over the next year, we can bring back the objectives that we feel like we can accomplish to satisfy those goals. So basically, you guys will establish the missions. We will then come back and establish the objectives and tasks that will help accomplish those missions. So as we, again, go through tonight, I know there's only 2 of you here, so we're missing one, and hopefully he'll be here soon. He's on his way. But have you had any thoughts about the upcoming year? Have you had any thoughts about, through your recent discussions, about improvements you want to see, projects, service delivery from a community standpoint that you want to take back to the full council for the strategic planning session?
Well, first off, you got the improvement on our recycling centers. Getting people to please, look through before you throw it in the trash, bag it up. Would you please look, and maybe there's cans, maybe there's bottles and stuff in there that you're going to put in the bag, and if you would please recycle it. And the way we could do about this is saving you money. We're not doing this to be burdensome on the county. We would like for you to do this so we can save you money and thus not raise taxes or have to have all these fees when they start tightening down on how much stuff we can actually bury.
Well, obviously, that's a mindset change of the people, right? I mean, we don't bag up their garbage, they bag it up on their own and carry it. So that's a mindset change. So some of the things that we have been doing, and obviously is open for your discussion, we have already been through TV ads, we've been through newspaper ads, we've been through radio ads. for trying to improve recycling. We've got the signs, going up, at all the centers for the cardboard, as you had, recommended. So, to get more specific, how do we change that mindset of the people? I mean, we're putting the word out, trying to identify the need and importance of recycling, but what else can we do? And I'm just asking you for discussion purposes, to
Yeah.
open it up.
Well, what you do is like, use Dick for example. We use Dick's radio station and put stuff out there. You know, Dick could run little ads or public service notices or however he does it. It says, you know, the staff, the council and staff of Little Coney County would like to ask
All right, so,
ask you, the people, we're all in the same, like, we're all in the
all
same
right, so
boat.
let's elaborate
Yeah.
on that a little bit. So, what we want to do from an overall goal standpoint is increase the recycling, which should be a recurring goal, right? I mean,
Yes.
that should stay on there, and we know that. But as part of that, we've got to have a goal to change the mindset of people with regard to recycling. So council, maybe is one of their goals for recycling for the upcoming year, is an increase in our marketing and public announcement and awareness campaign that we could build into the budget from an overall media campaign standpoint.
Yeah, see if you do this, we're not trying to, if we say pass ordinance, that we're legislating or demanding, you do this or else. But if you ask, you get a lot more people to do a lot more by asking and say, look here, we're all in this together, and the mindset is to help us out. You know, before you throw it in the big bag, in your bag, you're gonna throw in household garbage, don't put the aluminum cans, throw the aluminum cans in the dumpster at the convenience center. Same for glass bottles. And you start asking and say, look, you know, we're doing this, and, cause we really don't wanna raise taxes. We don't wanna have to charge. And explain to them what the tipping fees are, the hauling fees, and maybe we could break this down through an ad campaign that costs this much to get it hauled over to Georgia to dump. And then you say, well, how long will this private dump be open? We gotta ask ourselves the hard questions. You know, it's not like we can demand, hey, you gotta take this stuff. You know, we're a customer of theirs, but they can say it's not viable for us to be a customer anymore. Or the thing could fill up, Georgia could change the rules. Cause once you cross the state line, you got interstate transportation.
All right, so we've got a marketing campaign, a more comprehensive marketing campaign. What else?
Mr. Hart, chime in.
Well, I think Etta is pretty much, described, we need better service for, ambulance services for the people in the outreaches of the county. And I was gonna leave it up to her. I think she's supposed to speak on that.
Sorry, I'm just making some notes. Okay. All right, when you say better ambulance service, obviously, the most identifiable portion of that is an expansion of territories covered, the total number of ambulances and the total geographic area that they can cover in a more timely fashion.
Right.
And those can be identified through responses, obviously the physical ambulance, but we can put some benchmark indicators on those. Now, are you talking about working with the hospital to try and find a way to fund those or encourage the hospital to expand the number of ambulances as a?
Well, that would be good, but we could expand our own. Mr. King, I can tell you what type of training we got and what we can do, and I've been looking on Gov Deals, and you can pick an ambulance up for $5,000 or less.
All right, so now we're getting down into the objectives that we're required to bring to you. So are you saying your overall goal for us is to start our own EMS service?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what we got now, if those people are trained, let's give them the equipment to man the posts that they need to where that we can service community or the outreach areas of this county,
Okay, I'm
like
confused.
Lone Creek.
You're saying that you want our paramedics you want us to purchase ambulances and us to staff them with paramedics for transport to provide ALS care? And I know we're getting into, you wanna go ahead?
Yeah, let's
All right, let's
get,
skip that one and we'll move on to another one.
you wanna let her go?
It's your committee.
Yeah, go.
Okay, well, since we're talking about this topic,
Yeah.
why don't I just chime in? I'm actually here, first of all, to give thanks, Thanksgiving Day for me. And so thank you, Mr. McCall, for allowing me to speak. And I'm here on behalf of my constituents from the north end of the county. Yes, the same ones who back in May of last year brought to my attention the need for advanced life support services. And that's a distinction we need to make here, because our volunteers provide basic life support, and what's lacking in many parts of the county is advanced life support. There is a distinction, and our volunteers have a limited scope of practice. Paramedics and certified personnel have a broader scope of practice. So, like I said, the problem at my end of the county was brought to my attention back in May. And this became apparent after a few unfortunate incidents. I want to be clear, we're not talking about our volunteers here. They're tops, A1. They respond very quickly. They're very helpful. What we're talking about is emergency personnel that can provide those advanced life support services. So, myself and two representatives from the community met with Mr. Mulder on July 13th, and then in turn, he met with OMH officials. There was a lot of talk prior to that time about expanding ALS services, but no real action until Mr. Mulder's visit. But then communication became kind of fragmented, and I was hearing, okay, they'll do something in October, and then they'll do something in November, and then they'll do something in December. And so we really weren't, I wasn't feeling like we were getting very far. And so that day where Mr. Davis and I, Mr. Mulder and Mr. Root met with OMH officials about those notorious bonds, I decided to bring that up again. Okay, so at this point in time, the hospital has provided a partial solution. Okay, they hired a paramedic and an EMT, and they're going to station them at Doug Hollow Road from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So, Mr. McCall, if you're at the dive shop and you are injured, make sure it happens between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Now, I'm just joking, and all joking aside, we're very grateful for the added coverage. Okay, but we also feel that at some point in the future, we'd like to see it 24-hour coverage. So after 10 p.m., the vehicle returns to its hub at the hospital, and they will still be available, for our use, but we'll have to drive a longer distance. And those decisions were made based on the time frames where calls were coming in over the last so many years. So the vast majority of the calls were, in fact, within that time frame. But we all know that we don't plan accidents and tragedies, so I would like to eventually see expanded coverage to 24 hours a day. Now, at the previous Law Enforcement Committee meeting, we discussed having Mr. Mulder and members of our emergency services team evaluate the need for expanded coverage in the entire county, because it's not just the north end, it's also areas like Long Creek and other areas that are more remote. And so I came here today not just to thank publicly the hospital for giving us some extra coverage, but to ask you not to abandon that idea of, continuing this dialogue on what we can do for our county. And so, yes, thank you for the coverage that we have, but please go on with that idea of getting everybody together and discussing the future of, EMS in this county. So again, I'd like to iterate that having the paramedics at Doug Hollow Road, that increased availability will increase the probability of improved outcomes. But the reality is that accidents and medical emergencies aren't limited to specific hours of the day. Second thing I wanted to discuss with you today was that Mr. Davis and I previously had a discussion that we needed to keep in better contact with various groups and various components in the county. And the officials at the hospital is one of those groups that we seldom talk to. Okay, in the 3 years that I've been on council, I've been over there twice. So we don't really know what they're doing. We don't know what their plans are for us. And as a consequence, we're making lots of assumptions that are probably incorrect as to what, they're going to provide us in the future. And so I made a little pact with Mr. Hunter Combe that we were going to keep in touch more frequently. And we planned on getting together after the first of the year, which is soon now, to talk about, what is lacking, what is needed in Oconee County. But with regards to that, the truth is I just have anecdotes. Anecdotes from residents that call me and say, I can't find a doctor. I was being treated for breast cancer radiation at OMH, and the machine broke down, and they were sending me every day to Greenville, and so on and so forth. But those are anecdotes. I don't have real data. So when I go to my visit with Mr. Combe, I wanted to suggest if we could possibly get more information from residents as to what their perceived needs are or what they perceive is lacking, and perhaps then we can better gauge what we need to do to improve the quality and the delivery of healthcare services here. But I didn't want to start that conversation with him without your permission. So I just wanted to run this by you. And also I wanted to ask you if there was something you would like me to include in my conversation with him when we meet.
Well, one thing you could do, Etta, and he, when I asked him, pin him down the other night, they admitted to it. When a doctor retires, like you work for whatever, and under their umbrella, and you retire, you basically cannot, if you get your retirement, well, then you gotta follow their rules. Their rule is you can't practice medicine anymore within a 50-mile radius of their hospital. And before we had like Julius Earle, when he'd retired, he was helping at Rosa Clark. We had a bunch of other doctors that were retired, and they eventually become bored. They would like to do volunteer work, and we'd like to. Maybe you could work something out with them. But right now, you have to. What I understand is you have to turn your DEA number in. You can't.
Okay, so they can't write prescriptions once they retire?
No.
Okay. I'll talk to them
And
about that.
that's something, maybe you can work out, maybe you can't. And as far as your ambulances go, it's an excellent idea. Mr. Hart had a great idea. Charlie's already got training, get his people trained up. We can get the ambulances at a deal. Old Randy Gilchrist just bought one. He's gonna put a boom on it. It was a beautiful ambulance. And he got it for $5,000 out of Massachusetts. And everything was on it.
Well, we can still provide immediate care, or we have a number of paramedics that are certified on staff that operate out of vehicles and respond to calls. So we can still provide that immediate care. The ambulance provides you with transport capabilities. And I think we're talking about, that's why I asked a minute ago, you're talking about a whole different ballgame if you're asking the county or suggesting the county get into emergency medical service from a transport standpoint.
Well, I mean, you got the firemen already there. Glenn had a good idea. Park an ambulance down at the fire station.
But the ambulance doesn't give you anything unless you're getting into transport.
Yeah, well, that's
If
what
you
the
want to
ambulance for.
provide better care, more immediate care, then maybe we need to expand the number of paramedics we have on staff and position them throughout the county. But I think we're talking about two different things.
I think we're talking about two different things too, and the way I see it, it's really the hospital's responsibility to provide this service to us. That's how I feel about it. As far as, rushing to the scene of a situation and transporting that patient to the hospital, that's really their domain. I'm a little reluctant to create our own EMS service. But I guess my question to perhaps Chief King would be, what about some of the more benign treatments, if you will? Everybody and his brother carries an EpiPen anymore. Why couldn't some of our volunteers carry at least that? They do.
They do. I got it in my presentation a little bit to describe that. but-
Okay, well then I'll wait to hear your comments. So those were my comments, and we can continue this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, with the permission of the committee, I'll put in the suggested goals to continue working and develop the EMS improvement plan that was previously discussed at a recent meeting, and I can tell you we are working on that. There have been some difficulties with obtaining some participation from other critical members in the community that we would need to help generate that plan, but we're hoping that those will start to improve here shortly. So we'll include that on there. Mr. Davis, we're going through the inclusion of the strategic planning priorities and goals right now. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you before, we're changing the way we've done that in the past, and we're trying to get some input at the committee level that we can compile and then present to the full council at the strategic planning session in March. So this is kind of a little bit of a different process. So we're asking the committee to discuss the law enforcement, public safety, and health and welfare of the county and bring some, 2, 3, 4 suggested goals that we can discuss at the committee level or council level.
The other thing you need to do, Scott, and nobody wants to hear this, we gotta have some more deputies and investigators. I don't know how we gonna afford it, or just hits the church down the street from me on Sunday. It broke into there, tore the place all to pieces. Last night, my renter, they went him home upstairs, night before last, him home upstairs. They kicked the side door in on the apartment I own and tried to get in there. And, David McMahon has been working on that, and they're just overwhelmed. I mean, they think they got one put out and 4 more crop up.
So you would like to see an increase in the resolved crimes through investigation, and perhaps a decrease in the overall criminal activity as a result of employing additional deputies?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's expensive. It's like, like the fire department, Well, when you need the firemen, you need the firemen. Ordinarily, you think the firemen just riding around doing nothing. But when they're there, when you need them, they're there. And the same as a deputy. And I've said this before, when you get broke into or you need something, or you got somebody threatening to wring your neck or whatever, you need, the law enforcement serves a vital role.
Okay.
And we seem to be overrun with these crackheads and whatever else that's causing these crimes. And it's a revolving door. I mean, they tell me they lock one up and they turn right around. And he makes bond on the first one. And David's already got him locked up again for the same thing. It's just, and that's something we can't fix the court system. That's state law. But we can try to put more deputies out there, to try to deter it. Maybe seeing the sheriff's car ride by, you say, well, maybe I'll not do that right now because he's gonna arrest me. It's expensive. Yes, I know it's expensive.
All right. What else?
And then boating, the other thing, boating safety, but we're gonna do that by teleconference, so we'll bring that up at a later thing.
Okay. Tonight
No.
or next meeting? Okay. All right, so just to kind of, while everybody's still thinking, summarize, talking, continued recycling efforts, maintaining that on a consistent basis, trying to find a way through marketing, an expansion of our marketing efforts and changing the theme, if you will, or the message by trying to change the mindset of the citizens to relay the importance of recycling as it relates to, number one, the environment, but also number two, financially. And that was kind of where we came up with the Don't Trash Your Cash campaign, and we've been using that in some of our campaigns and trying to relay the importance of, recycling is a commodity and not trash. So every time you throw cardboard into the trash dumpster, you're actually throwing away money, if you will. We've got trying to find a way to expand ambulance service into other areas of the county, whether that be through working with GHS and/or expanding the paramedic access or accessibility throughout the county. Third, we've got to continue working on the EMS improvement plan and complete that we've already started. And then fourth, an increase in our deputy investigators and deputies to hopefully see an impact and an increase in the number of investigations and also an increase in the total crime resolution. So that's what I've got so far. That's 4. Mr. Davis, I know you came in a little late. Do you have anything you want to?
Yeah, and this kind of goes in with the deputies. I feel like, when I go back and look at the amount of money that we continually put into, your crime, the crime prevention is, I think, what we're all after on here. And it's tough to put a dollar figure on this, on what you do, but as in talking with a lot of the SRO officers and some of the officers that work with, kids like, I do, and a lot of the people that coach, and it comes back to the recreation. If we figure out a way, and there is some camps that they obviously already do that identify at-risk youth that they're doing, and if you look at what that camp does for these kids, you're fighting crime on the front end, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than fighting crime on the backside. So I do agree with more deputies, but I also agree, look at it saying we need more work on the front with these kids. We need more. It's very easy to start to identify kids that may have an issue later on in life that don't have the mentors like I had growing up, or a lot of us in this room had growing up. And I think these deputies have become mentors to these kids, and I know for a fact several SROs that I stay in touch with, they're changing these kids' life. And so if we have a way of reaching more of these kids, and I think we can all sit back and think about when you were in elementary school, it's very easy to identify, and especially if you grew up here. I see a list on this arrest reports, and I went to school with him. I can remember him having issues from a young age. So how do we combat crime? We keep that person from ever becoming a criminal. Now, is that something that you can say, hey, we spent $100,000 on this, and we solved that, we kept that person from becoming a criminal? Not necessarily. It's kind of those things that you can't really measure, but we know that they're successful. And that's one of the things that I definitely want to push more for is, these at-risk youth. There's not a huge emphasis on it, and the very little figure that we're doing, we're combating crime on the backside of it. We have people that get arrested 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and it's hard to teach. What's hard to teach an old dog new tricks? Well, when they're younger, we can work on them a little bit better. And I think, and when I was talking with Sheriff Crenshaw on this, one of the unique things that he stated was a lot of these kids that grow up here, that some of them are poverty and some of them aren't, but they end up staying in Oconee County more than somebody that, their parent has a great job and their parents are doing good things. These kids end up staying in Oconee County, so they see them from a young age and they see them all the way up. And if they've been in law enforcement long enough, they've seen this kid become a criminal at the age of 17, 18, 19, and they're dealing with them at 33 when they roll up and they're like, hey, how you doing? Good to see you again.
So
Get in the back of the car.
Maybe to kind of simplify that, working with the sheriff to develop a youth program, intervention program, for lack of a better word, right? So developing strategies or programs to engage the youth and identify those at-risk children and develop the programs to begin working with them and develop strategies. So maybe kind of we'll simplify it in that way. We can
Yeah,
work with your-
mentoring through volunteering. I mean,
mentoring,
and we
youth
got a lot of
mentoring
people in the
program.
community. I know
Okay.
that I've spoke with a lot of guys, especially in the, you know, they just don't know how to get involved in it, how to mentor these kids and how to work with these kids. And, you know, that's the thing. I mean, and it's, you know, you're giving a kid a chance, and sometimes that's all they need is a chance.
Okay. Okay, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to suggest we kind of suspend this discussion for a minute.
Okay.
I know we've got about 30 more minutes left, but I want to make sure Chief King gets his time, and we do have a few other items on here. I know Mr. Root has a couple of things, so with your permission, I'd like to kind of defer.
Yeah.
Allow
By all
Mr.
means.
King to go ahead and come up and present his presentation.
Yeah, then we'll get right on to, what David's got for us.
Thank you, and very much appreciate the opportunity to share the accomplishments of our team again this year as we did last year. And there's a slide or two in here, I hope, that are pretty exciting, that will build off the groundwork Ms. Kamick laid just a couple of minutes ago, because there are a lot of things happening with the Greenville Hospital System as it concerns the EMS service in Oconee. So we're going to share a couple of those items as we go in here. So I think that was a great segue leading into it. But again, I think most everybody now understands who we are and what we represent. Oconee County Emergency Services is not essentially a building or a couple of trucks that are out in the street. It's a family of response organizations that are positioned throughout the county to deliver an absolutely excellent service to our citizens. 438 total personnel today, 396 volunteers that we're absolutely proud of, that are supported by 32 career staff. 18 fire stations, both county, municipal, and special purpose districts. And I underline 18 in there because when we delivered this presentation to you last year, that number was 17. So I think most of you remember our discussion on Holly Springs and that department opening up, and the volunteers there doing an incredible job, and we'll talk about them again. But again, to see that number increase by 1. 7 rescue squads, our dive team, special rescue, hazmat, all providing fire, medical, and emergency management services throughout the county. And essentially that's our team. What they do day to day, the comment was made that a lot of folks feel that the firemen are folks that are in their trucks that just ride around. They are riding around, but you can look and see in this slide where they're headed to. The volunteers and our team answered 7,599 emergent responses.
They couldn't pick up one more to make it an even.
One more, we tried. I looked for that number in everywhere in our database and just couldn't find an even number. And on those 7,600 responses, on average, they spend right at 42 minutes on scene. So when you take that number of call, it's not a quick out and back response or just go into the next door neighbor's house. On average, by the time they're back, return equipment, nearly spending an hour on each one of those responses. You can look down the spreadsheet there at the different call types that they run. I did want to include the 2016 incidents in there, and you'll see a pretty big gap of about 1,500 calls. This is based on both normal escalation of calls, the call volume growing in the county, but a good many of those numbers are based on that our 4 municipalities are now reporting into the same county database. We have had a change in leadership of 2 of the fire chiefs in the municipalities. They've come on board with the county reporting system, so this data truly reflects all the red light organizations in the county. So that's a little bit of the reason for the jump in call numbers. But again, an incredible number of fires, 612 actual fires. Medical calls, you can see, nearly account for 4,000 of the incidents that we run. Good intent calls, and we'll get into some pretty heavy storm responses here in a little bit. Before our folks are able to get out and start to run calls, obviously we have to provide training for them. And while we do have career members, we do have volunteer members, we don't refer to them as that. Each one of our personnel are referred to as team members, because NFPA, because OSHA, because any of the organizations that we're responsible for answering to, They don't differentiate career and volunteer. The training standard's the same, the response objectives are the same, and therefore we don't differentiate between our career and volunteer. So when they go into training, the expectations are the same. Over the last year, 31 firefighters have completed their basic firefighter certifications. There's been 42 emergency medical responders, and Ms. Kamick did a good explanation that there's different levels of emergency medical responders. Emergency medical responder is the base level recognized by DHEC medical responder that's able to go out and provide care to the public. An emergency medical technician, we were able to train 9 of those students last year with a given 2,160 man-hours. Emergency medical technicians, that there are a little over 75 now scattered throughout the team. These are the ones that provide a little bit higher level of care. They provide the first round of medications, epinephrine, nitroglycerin, Narcan, those types of things to provide a little bit level of higher life support care. Again, we've got 5 of the vehicles that are certified by DHEC that are running EMT level. But again, we're able to train 9 students in the last year. While it's not 2017, we do have a class starting in 2 weeks, and absolutely proud there's 19 registered in that class to get that going. That for each student, that class is about 250 hours individually of investment. Station and squad level, this is when they go back to their stations, and the monthly training, Saturday training, totaled for just over 25,000 hours of training individually by the members. When we look on average at our personnel and add it up, each one of our team members, career and volunteer both, averaged about 56 hours of training over the last year. That may not sound like a lot, but that's an entire work week away from their family that they're investing essentially for free to provide a service to our communities. Specifically to fires, 2,698 fire-related incidents. A good many of those are structure fires, structural-related fires. Our average response time, again, as a rural county, 10 minutes and 39 seconds. 14 minutes is the NFPA standard. Our goal in Oconee is to get that number below 10 minutes. And we're working hard and really striving, and it takes a lot on an average of 7,000 calls to lower that by 1 or 2 seconds. So being able to lower it by another minute is a pretty outstanding feat, but we're committed to that. Fires are taking us a little longer, about 45 minutes on scene. Our fire investigations program, this is most all of those are volunteers that investigate our fires and work with the sheriff's office to prosecute those who intentionally set them. They investigated 54 suspicious fires in the last year and have made 3 arrests, 2 of those being felony convictions. Our fire loss this year it stands at about $1.34 million. This is about a $350,000 drop from last year's fire dollar loss, which is a pretty incredible number. The damage, this doesn't include contents, this is structural only. Mutual aid support is pretty widespread. With having 10 border counties in 3 different states, our team is called upon pretty often to cross over our own lines and provide support, and we're open to that, but because we receive a good service back as well. The one number, if there was one in this presentation, that we're not very proud of, but again, it's a number that we work hard to reduce each year, is 4 civilian fire deaths. In the last year, there were 4 civilians in our county that perished due to fire. One of those was actually from a motor vehicle accident. The state has changed the way they report, so now if the death is ruled by the coroner to be from thermal, not just trauma from the wreck, it's considered a fire death. One of those being from a vehicle accident, the other 3 being from structural fires, and none of those homes had a working smoke detector in them, which has been required in homes since 1975. But we work diligently to reduce that number. We have a commitment to our citizens that if they do not have a working smoke detector in their home, they're both provided and installed free of charge to those residents. So a number we hope to see at 0 each year, but last year that number rose to 4 in our county. Emergency medical response, I'll kind of do the accomplishment side first, and the right hand of that is a little bit about the improvement plan that we discussed at this last meeting. We continue to partner with the Greenville Health System to provide that EMS basic level first response, meaning that through our first responders and through a handful of team members, non-transport basic life support, meaning that they got first round life-saving capability to go out and do their work, and obviously rely on Greenville Health System to provide transportation back to the hospital. Our DHEC license was expanded to include 2 additional vehicles in the last year, and we continue to look to expand that number. Vehicles are pretty simple to place. It's a money spent on additional equipment, but the staffing side of it to be able to show that that vehicle's able to answer up within 5 minutes and provide an EMT 80% of the time gives us a little difficulty. We now have a DEA and FDA approved pharmacy license that we're now obtaining our own medications and securing those and providing those through our own license rather than relying on GHS's. One of the big steps that we're taking is we're working to establish an MOU with our municipalities for them to be able to deliver the same level of medical response services. Being the type and size organization that our county is, we have the staff and the support network to be able to build a DHEC license program, but that is not always the case for the municipalities that work in our county. They're short staffing and the priorities to them may not allow them. So both DHEC is allowing and our medical control physician to simply place an MOU with each one of our cities that will allow them to operate at the EMT level with county direction and with support from our team. And again, we're working through that. I know Mr. Root's helping, and still a lot of work to be done, but the cities are supportive of that and open to it, that we're able to partner to provide that service in 4 more locations. Obviously, medical responses account for a large number of the calls that we go to. And again, I think it's important that our team members had 243 students trained in CPR. This was outside the walls of emergency services, essentially, both in our county employees and in citizens across the county. So medical response team, absolutely incredible in the work they've done, and in most ways are the unsung heroes in service delivery for our team. Specifically on the EMS improvement plan, I know that this group charged Mr. Mulder and our staff with working with GHS and other stakeholders to create a plan to improve our EMS system. That project started off at a slow start. I'm proud to say that over the last 3 weeks that GHS has tasked or assigned a specific senior staff member, a director within their hospital organization, to oversee that project. That is essentially their only job function, is they're assigned to this plan. We have done the same. We've assigned a senior staff member, Deputy Chief Ryan Eubanks, that's our EMS coordinator, and the 2 of them have essentially worked in partnership over the last 3 weeks with our EMS system, our sheriff's office, they handle our 911, and Lisa and GIS to a very open and positive dialogue into this improvement plan. I've been privy to 2 of their conversations. They've daily they make their way around the county to various aspects or individuals or ambulance crews, fire crews, rescue squads, you name it. They're going out and making those visits. But again, I can't say enough for the both staff members that's been assigned the open and ongoing communication. And we made the comment in here, out-of-the-box deployment models. They have truly, over the last couple of weeks, have pencil and paper laid every option on the table that'll be presented to you. GHS has assigned a timeline to their staff, and we support it, that plan be ready to publish and present to you in GHS leadership the 2nd week of February. There'll be a handful of options for both to look at and improving service delivery, whether it be through multiplying or adding more ambulances out in the community, to improving the capability of existing staff members and equipment, consolidated, unifying our dispatch. Currently, EMS 911 calls come in, they're handled by 2 different locations to dispatch and account for separate resources going to the same incident. And obviously, we need to look at integrating our personnel training. The volunteers or the team members from emergency services that go to the call could be trained in a different location and fashion than those that are riding on the ambulance to provide the same. One of the others, I know we mentioned that the ALS care is typically provided by the paramedics that work on the ambulance. We do have paramedics that are spread throughout the team, both as career staff and volunteer, and that their ability to operate has been hampered by procedure. The procedure, the policies that we had in place haven't allowed them to perform at the level that they've been given. The Townville school shooting is a great example. Scott Crine, our Director of Emergency Management, was the first paramedic to the Townville school shooting, and simply had to operate at a first aid level because he couldn't perform the duties of a paramedic because the policies locally wouldn't allow him to do that. Those are things that have all been expressed and discussed and are open. And again, I'm excited of the dialogue that's happening between GHS and Oconee County to improve that plan. Again, they've set the goal for second week of February for that plan to be delivered and present options. Again, Lisa Simmering down the hallway in GIS has really pulled together mountains of data to push and to gauge where the need in the county lies at. Commented again, we absolutely support the deployment of the ambulance in the north end of the county. Every conversation we had is it needs to be 24 hours. We don't close shop at 10 o'clock at night and go home, and neither does the community. So that everything is supported. There needs to be 24-hour protection around the clock, not only in some parts of the county, but in every one of them. Emergency management. Certainly, Scott Crine does an incredible job and sets the bar across the state for emergency managers. Increased CERT. CERT is our community emergency response team. These are citizens who come in and take part in training and activities to essentially train other citizens. They're not typically first responders that answer a pager or radio. These are citizens that go out to churches, school groups, civic organizations, and deliver training. In the last year, 181 citizens have been trained in 3 different focus areas. And within the last couple of months, we've received an AmeriCorps employee that's working with our office for the next 12 months that'll essentially give us a 40-hour team member to focus on increasing the delivery of training to our citizens. Weather alert radio grant, doesn't sound like much, but we received a grant to provide a couple hundred weather alert radios that'll go out to our special needs population, low income areas, and those that are prone to power outages are where those are targeted towards. One of the things that I think is absolutely important to mention is the Irma disaster that came through September 11th, the night of September 11th into the 12th. And just to put it into perspective, in the 18 hours starting at 2 p.m. on September 11th into the morning of the 12th, there were 721 calls for service answered by both roads and bridges and public safety folks. That's 10% of our call volume annually was answered in just a little over 14 hours. In clearing trees, down power lines, damage to structures. There was an incredible coordination of resources. There were folks both from our office, roads and bridges, utilities that responded to here at the sheriff's office in dispatch and was there to watch the calls come in and be able to triage and deploy our resources as a true team to make things happen. It's important that honorable mention goes to the roads and bridges. I know Kyle's sitting over there, where they were able to complete the initial push. I had to learn the term push from him that night. I didn't understand that, but that's essentially where they go out and the crews are able to push and open a lane of road throughout the county, and that was completed, Kyle, in 26 hours, just over a day. Your initial push was completed throughout the county. That not is picking up the debris off the side, but is opening up access across the county. Currently, Chief Crine is managing a recovery work group with Fire Rescue, Roads and Bridges, Solid Waste, Sheriff's Office, and our finance group. This is working through the federal disaster declaration to look at return of funding back into the county for what was expended during that recovery. So that continues to work through our emergency management office. One of the things we're excited to announce this year, this is a project that's been working over the last 5 years that we mentioned it kind of falls dead. It picks up a couple months later, it falls dead. But 2 weeks ago, the week before Christmas, we were able to meet with the school district. They were able to give the final thumbs up on funding a fire and EMS program at the Hamilton Career Center. We're continuing to support them now on obtaining the materials for the program and looking for a teacher to teach the program, but essentially beginning in fall of 18. Students will have the opportunity during school hours to go and obtain their basic firefighter, EMR, EMT, hazmat, auto extrication, and will spend about 30 hours of ride-along time with fire departments or EMS agencies in the county to prepare them for when they get out of school for a field in public safety. This has been a long time coming, but not only are we looking to be able to train folks to enter the workforce in public safety, I also feel this is the future of our volunteer workforce in the county. That if we're able to graduate 25 students a year into the public safety field, it creates another avenue to sustain our volunteer workforce that is so great to our county. So again, I know there's been some council input across the street to help make that happen. I'm very appreciative of it. I see this as one of the highlighting accomplishments of the organization over the last 5 years, is that program being kicked off. Capital projects, dealing with apparatus of the fleet. One of the things we discussed and a pretty adventurous night with dealing with our engine last budget year was taken back to the drawing board the way that we purchase essentially our largest purchase each year in a fire engine, and that the commission and chiefs working together to create a more standard product that is for benefit to all of us, vehicle maintenance, our staff and volunteers as well. And we hope to bring that engine for this year to you within the next 8 weeks to regular council. Our staff squads, those are the next 2 items that are up for replacement. Those will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. These are replacing our 2 red pickup trucks that provide support to the specialty teams and fire and rescue folks. Those are coming. But one of the things I wanted to mention, if you see in the picture the 4 SUVs that are sitting there, each of those with partnership with the folks at Fleet Maintenance and a couple others to help us. In the last year, we were able to obtain a total of 6 of these SUVs out of federal surplus to replace frontline staff or response vehicles at a cost savings of $202,000. These are decent low mileage cars that come out of surplus that already had emergency equipment installed, light, sirens. We dropped a radio and essentially put a red stripe down them in-house, and within a couple of weeks we were able to take vehicles and put them back in the road at a pretty incredible cost savings. We hope to do that where we can in the future, but again, I think it's just worth mentioning that there are 6 vehicles in the last year that we've looked for out-of-the-box ways to help save and do the right thing. Right-hand side, we continue to harp on that page of our capital replacement plan for apparatus. Red light public safety for us, there's about 240 vehicles in the fleet around the county. We've worked hard to pare that list down to essentially what's needed to support public safety, but at the same time is to express the need that list keeps up with, because each time an engine is pushed back a year or pushed down, it doesn't go away. Those trucks are still running calls, just a year older each year. Fire stations, this is pictures as of this morning of the 2 projects that are underway. Obviously Bountyland Station, South Cove Road, the land's been cleared, footer markings are up. Hope to see some footings go in the ground and that station start to rise in the very near future. Station on the right is Village Creek. That substation, we expect it to be turned over and opened up within the next 4 weeks. As you can see, the building's in the dry, the well's been done. One thing to mention about the well, they put and dug the well. We went up there the afternoon, they dug the well. Most wells in the area produce 60 to 90 gallons a minute. That well is nearly 300 gallons a minute, to where they feel there's some river that runs under Village Creek Road. And we initially asked them, don't put a well there. We're going to stick a fire hydrant on top of it, because there is none in that area. But again, that station is proceeding well, and we expect it to be open and operating within the next month. Last one, I do want to mention and just give you an update. Holly Springs, we were proud to announce it last year being our first department that was created and brought online in 40 years. They went in service and answered their first call July 13th of this year to a woods fire in the area. And since July 13, they've answered 24 calls, which is kind of funny. Is their station number 24. They ended the year, their first year, with 24 total responses. But can't say enough for what that group continues to do, from starting out with nearly zero training to within 7 months being an operational in-service fire department that's been a huge player in their community just in that short amount of time. We hope to use the same example to recruit and bring in volunteers in the Bountyland area, and we'll see how that project goes. Last page, and I don't know that I need to go through each one of them. These are our 2018 commitments to service. These are the things that we feel are important to us and important for us to deliver a quality service to our citizens. One of the things that's in there that we've made a priority, obviously aggressively identifying and bringing in volunteers. We've seen an increased need over the past couple of months for emergency medical responders in the Walhalla area and firefighters in the picket post area. Last Friday, we did some restructuring with picket post and the way that they're dispatched to calls, and providing them a little bit higher level of service in that one of their surrounding departments is responding with them until we can get the number of volunteers in that area back up. So again, it's about the service that we provide to the citizens, and even though we're not proud to be short of volunteers there, we're doing the right things to make our response match the need there. But again, I can't say enough of appreciation for the support you've shown our team, and I hope we are delivering the service that you expect and our citizens want each year. So thanks again for what you do for us.
Chief King, I would, on behalf of this committee, most people don't realize the dedication and the training you guys have to go through. And it is I really appreciate it, because like I said, people think you're just riding around doing nothing, and you're not. You when you need the firemen, you need him. When your house catches on fire, you don't call a park ranger. You don't call anybody else. You call a fireman. And you guys have to be there. You can't say, well, wait a minute, we gotta stop and do this, or we can't. You gotta be there with everything on Johnny on the spot, and everything has to work. So we really appreciate everything you do, and especially your volunteers. I can't say enough for them. Those guys, volunteer means you don't get paid. You're out there just because you like to do it, and that means a lot.
I agree, and I probably should have put a slide in here, or even some videos that during the 8-day stretch where it never got above freezing, they answered 6 working structure fires in freezing weather. There was one just outside of West Union Friday night. Call went out at just at 10 minutes after midnight, and they were delivered breakfast from Bojangles after the sun come up the next morning. And again, it would be easy to roll back over, go back to bed, especially in below freezing temperatures. But again, during that 8-day stretch, was even more grateful for the work that they do to continue to get out of bed and come when it's not just miserable conditions, but dangerous and taxing conditions at the same time. So, but again, if anybody's out riding around, it's me. They say I get in the way when I go to calls. So if you do see somebody just riding around, it's probably me. They shoo me away pretty quick so they can handle stuff. But I appreciate it, and please know that I'll relay it to everyone the thanks you give. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I echo Mr. McCall on that too. Thank you for all that everyone does to keep us safe here. 2 quick questions that I had for y'all on when we have a fire and it's a total loss. It seems to me that the buildings hang on there forever. I don't know if there's anything that we can do, or if that comes on a code enforcement side of things. There's 4 large houses that I know of that are still hanging out, condemned, boarded up. two of them in particular have certain things going on, as we know that we really don't want in this county. When the policy, when a person abandons, obviously they'll collect a insurance premium on that. But after that, there's nothing, that makes them clean this up. However, knowing a little bit about insurance, part of that is the cleanup and the takedown and the removal of that structure in there. But the person is chosen to take the money and run, so we say, and abandon these properties that I know of. Is there anything that we can do from our side to ensure that these properties, because it is the person's responsibility to care for their property? I don't know if that's
I guess I'll start. I think the response is pretty limited. The things that we've seen in the past have been where obviously we would front the cash, the workload on the front to bulldoze, clean up, haul it to the landfill, and a lien is placed on the property. Has been the most prominent thing I've seen in the past. What we do is we give it 90 days that it's in the condition that it's in, and we go back to the homeowner, and they're issued essentially a letter, just a courtesy letter, saying that the property needs to be secured and expressing their liability for folks going in. We know the same, the Chandelier Court house that's down your way, we had an issue with it last week where we had folks were going in and out of it again and know that it's a hazard. So again, I don't know that there's anything we can force them to tear it down. The most prominent one I've seen is local governments footing the bill and then hoping to get their money back through a lien on sale of the property.
It is. Just what we've talked about before, similar to other derelict or abandoned structures, is via the International Property Maintenance Code, we can bulldoze them essentially, get to that part after you condemn them, and then lien the property. And that's pretty much our best avenue is getting the money up front at this point. But I did get some good prices from Mr. Carroll with the building codes about what the range of cost is going to be for certain sizes of structures that we can talk about in the budget season, so we can have an idea of how much we want to set aside, if any.
It just seems, I know every person sitting up here gets that call. Structure burned, 3 years have gone by, I know they've been paid out on it, what are we doing? And those structures, it's worse than just a condemned structure. And that was one of the questions that I had on there, but there is, from what I can see, exactly what you're saying, very little unless we have code enforcement to go out there and say, hey, we're gonna tear it down, put a lien on the property. And I wasn't just speaking about the one that you brought up.
Yes,
I know about that one, but there's so many of them that exist in Oconee County and they never get torn down, unless the person's rebuilding them. So, and we brought this up, and it's my failure to follow up on it. The fire department surcharge that we talked about, and, I did a little research on it when I thought this meeting was next month, so I apologize for not being here earlier. But we talked a little bit about every policy having $500 of surcharge, and I know it's difficult when y'all are doing your reports on there. Do y'all take down insurance companies and everything? Y'all do, correct?
We typically do.
Okay. Have y'all filed any surcharges this year that you know of? I know me in particular I've had 3 fires through my agency that we filed surcharges through that got, I don't know where the check went, but it went somewhere in Oconee County.
Yes.
But I was just wondering about that because I know that line item in a few other counties, not necessarily close to here, that I know that are collecting that, it's been $150,000 to $200,000. So
Yes.
that
I do believe there are a handful of the stations that are essentially that'll take the fire report and make a claim against it. There's a lot of mixed feelings about that. Most folks feel that it's billing for service is the connotation that goes along with it, and the majority of our team members just feel like that we provide the service to the citizens. So I think number one would be education, that it's an available check that comes from the insurance company, and then to pursue it and where it goes. Obviously, Charlie and our headquarters office, we don't pursue it. If it's pursued by the volunteer station, that goes back into the volunteers, because again, predominantly the manpower on scene, the trucks, the fuel, is coming from the volunteer stations, and they're supported by our staff. So, any pursuit of those has been done by the local stations, and they've kept that, within their own.
It seems like a lot of the public backlash on billing for services has been when this $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and that hasn't necessarily, that's not allowed in South Carolina. I think South Carolina allows up to 1,000. Most policies cover 500 as part of their. Obviously, that's covered through the. I don't see that ever being collected on somebody that did not have an actual policy on there. So I completely agree with that. But what I have seen, across the United States has been, billing $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, up to $25,000 for a fire, and that's, like you said, we're talking about a small amount of collections of this and help and hope to make that cheaper and better fire protection for that, so.
I agree. And again, I think it's two-sided. The ones that do send bills, they're not collecting on them, they're not following up. It's essentially a letter. If there were to be a rider, if there were to be a part of this policy to allow it, we'd appreciate it, kind of thing. I don't know that anybody's has set a rate for service where they're billing them, but I think it was several years ago, and probably a lot more predominant before county funding really came to the departments and stations, that there are a lot of companies out there that want you to bill for service. If you'll send them your fire report, or even now, they provide you the iPads. If you'll just take a picture of the license tag of the car in the wreck, we'll handle it. And we've heard way too many horror stories of collection agents going after citizens that have really scared most of our team members away from that type of service. Now, again, I think any consideration of out-of-the-box funding, we're open to, so. Thank y'all again.
Thank you. Mr. Root, you're old.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My recommendation for the solid waste ordinance and the litter ordinance gonna be the same, is that you take these and study them, and then get with either myself and/or Mr. Swain, and that we field any questions that you have. The background for that is, in particular, our solid waste ordinance is a bit long in the tooth, and it's not current with the times, so this new one is a complete overhaul. It's 13 pages, a single space ordinance. It's large, and a lot of that can be moved, not a lot, but a good amount of it we contemplate moving over to the operational manual for solid waste, but y'all still need to study it. So I wouldn't feel comfortable, I think y'all got this at the end of last week at best, feel comfortable with y'all moving this forward to council until you had a chance to really digest it, because there's a lot to it. It's an intricate ordinance. It's dealing with some important subject matters, certainly solid waste, but the litter too. So my recommendation is that, hey, you got it. We've been working on it diligently, and a lot of hard work has gone into it, both my office and certainly Mr. Swain's office, that you take it and study it. If you have questions, get to us before the next law enforcement, public safety meeting, and we'd be glad to sit down with you. If you don't, we can just address it then, but I think it'd be best if you just take it now, have it, and we bring it back up in April for a final discussion, and then to move it on to council. Seems to make the most sense, so you're most informed about the ordinance.
Don't you think we ought to have a meeting before April? This is kind of a hot topic.
That'd be great with me. That's the next one that's on the schedule. If we want to schedule a special meeting of the committee, that suits me.
I think we need to. This is something that we keep pushing back. We need to act on this.
Yeah, and there's a number of issues that have been brought up over the course of time, just like today, the recycling, making it, all right, would y'all please recycle your cardboard versus we're not gonna accept cardboard in the trash, or you have to recycle cardboard or all items. But these are, I know you don't wanna do that, but these are things that need to be discussed in there throughout the ordinance, so you have enough time to study it. If we wanna meet in a month, however we can have a special meeting of this committee, and I think it'd be great. I just want y'all to have enough time to really know the ordinance both the ordinances as they're proposed to you.
I think
Like we could do the
we
23rd.
need a meeting at least in a month minimum.
That's fine,
Like I said, we could meet the January 23rd or the 30th, and I can work with Ms. Smith to just verify that calendar, but if you wanna give it a little bit longer than that, we can, but,
No, we need to get this thing off the ground.
we'll take a look at either January 23rd or the 30th, and maybe call
Oh,
it.
yeah, ready whenever.
Cause
Just give them
time
enough
it gets through council, it's gonna be March.
Yeah, that'll give you 2 to 3 weeks to kinda look it over, if we do it
Alright.
the 23rd or the 30th.
Okay. So that all, under discussion items, that all was handled by Mr. Root, right?
I've got the last item.
Okay,
Won't take but 30 seconds. ServPro is, we're gonna provide you an update of the law enforcement center cleanup as a result of the fire that we had a
Right.
while back. ServPro is completely finished. All the cleanup has been taken care of upstairs and downstairs. All that has been signed off by the adjuster, and obviously the adjuster's paying them directly for that work. The architects have been employed. Once ServPro finished up and they were able to get in there, architects will be drawing up the renovation plans, or put-back plans, if you will, drafting the bid documents for the contractors to come in and bid on the work. That's under development right now. We're anticipating those to be completed within the next 4 weeks or so. We'll put it out to bid and hopefully start driving some nails shortly thereafter. HVAC system is gonna have to be pretty much redone. All the electrical in that area is gonna have to be redone. There's very little plumbing in that area. They just had a water fountain and I think one sink, and that was it. So luckily, there's not much plumbing. There's a meeting tomorrow with the architect and our emergency services staff to look at the downstairs, to look at their heating and air unit as well. We feel like it's gonna be fine, but they wanted to take a look at it anyhow. They've been having some issues with it. So they're gonna look at that, but the redesign's underway, so as soon as we get those plans and Scott Carroll has a chance to sign off on those, we'll go to bid. That's where we are.
okay.
And like I said, in our earlier discussion with regard to the strategic plan, we've got 4 or 5, good items here. I'll go through, compile some information like I will with each committee, and then this is not the only time you will obviously have a chance to voice your opinion on the goals. This was just an early get it started, get the thoughts rolling. So over the next few weeks or a month, we'll probably meet sometime in March by the time every committee has a chance to meet, begin continuing to think and expand on these discussions, and we'll have them again come the strategic planning session like we normally do. So,
All right, that's, any new business or old business, guys? All right, we done,
I did have, this is one that I spoke on real quick with Crenshaw, obviously based on, for some unknown reason, I keep getting involved in high-speed chases, not them chasing after me, but I have, the one that just occurred, and I briefly brought up about what can we do to help them combat and to make it safer for the officers as well as the community. And he is looking into, the text, where if you're within a 3-mile radius. And I also asked him to look into the GPS tagging units that, if you're close enough to the vehicle to shoot the back of the vehicle, it puts a GPS tag on it so we don't have these high-speed pursuits. And if you're not familiar with that one, having a car pass you at over 100 and something miles an hour within 2 inches of your truck, and it moves your truck mirror in, it'll change the way you feel about, we gotta do something about it. And I know they're really working on that, but, thank goodness there was not a life lost that day, and including the person that decided to run from that. But that was one thing that I definitely wanted to prioritize as well, that we continue to make that safer for us, because it's, you see a lot of communities are saying, hey, we're not gonna do high-speed chases. And I kind of disagree with that a little bit, because it gives the criminal hey, all I gotta do is run and they're not gonna chase me. Whereas there's things out there that are cost efficient, I won't say cheap, but cost efficient ways to make it safer to pursue a criminal that chooses to put everybody's life at risk. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
anything else?
Make a motion that we adjourned.
Okay, we're adjourned.
order. I need to either discuss or get an approval on the minutes for the last, October the 10th.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Moeller, you want to go with this, or you want to?
With your permission, Mr. Chair, I'd like to defer that toward the end of the meeting. Mr. Reed's got a number of items on here. I know it looks like a very lengthy list to discuss, but I think he'll move through it fairly quickly and then obviously have opportunities for questions, for you guys. But I'd like for him to go ahead and give his update, and then we can move on to the goals afterwards, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right, thank y'all. First item on the agenda for me would be Emmanuel Church Drive. Staff report of findings for the abandonment of that road, which is in Newry, South Carolina. And, in the last meeting, y'all had directed us to go ahead and, follow chapter 26-9 to investigate the abandonment of the road. Again, just a brief overview, the citizen that has the only house along the road is the one that contacted us about abandoning the road. He had put a gate up on the road before the abandonment. We asked him to remove it and told him the process, and he kind enough to work with us on that. And, following through 26-9, the questions that it asked, the road has been and currently isn't a county road. The road is used by general public, not much. It's a one-lane road, and he's really the one that uses it most, and there's another property owner along the road. The road is maintained by prescriptive easement, which is ditch to ditch right away. And a sign was placed on the road for 30 days, giving notice of the proposed abandonment and soliciting comments. We received no comments. We did contact the other property owner, and he was for the abandonment, kind of either way with it. He doesn't really go out to the property much, but he was fine with the road being abandoned from county maintenance. On the next, I'm sorry, Katie, that's wrong. There's a file there.
Mr. Mulder, do we need a motion on that to follow that, or we're good with it?
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we wanted on each one of them or whatever, or all together.
Basically provide an action item you guys consider.
Again, just a refresher of the map of the road and its location. Go on to the next one. So it is our recommendation that the Transportation Committee honor the request to abandon the entire portion of Emmanuel Church Drive from county maintenance. That meaning that Mr. Welch, the gentleman that is requested it, will have to go through the abandonment process through the courts. They would be better versed on that, but anyway, posting it in the newspaper and friendly lawsuit towards the county and any other interested parties to abandon it from our system. So what it takes from us by the ordinance is that they would, that if y'all agree, the Transportation Committee should make a motion recommending that the County Council consent to Mr. Welch's request for abandonment, and this requires a resolution on County Council's part.
Make a motion to present that as stated to council.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is a update regarding Savannah Drive and its acceptance into the rudimentary road program. The rudimentary road program, citizen-based, so we asked them to go get a petition right away, those sorts of things. They've had some troubles with getting with some of the property owners along the road, so we have, as just an update, we are currently trying to get in touch with those property owners because the lady we have in our office, Ms. Dell Owen, she does a great job with that, trying to find people and get in touch with them. We're still working through, I think there's 2 more people that she hasn't got in touch with along the road. We have to have consent from all owners, so we're just asking if this is something they're interested in, consent or denial. And then after we get consent from them, which was basically getting the petition signed by them, there is still further action that's gonna be required, which is gonna be getting the right-of-way, the 50-foot right-of-way along the entire road, and an adequate turnaround, and they have to accept the conditions of that, which are, just briefly, no new accesses to the road, moving things that are within that 50-foot right-of-way, those sorts of things. The road will keep its general alignment. And all that being said, we'll work through that process to make sure that we can get all that, and then we'll bring it back to y'all for y'all to review, make sure we've got everything that we have for y'all to accept it or deny it into the rudimentary road program. But we're still working through the process as of now.
Is that road gravel straight off of that Walnut
It is.
all the
Yes,
way
sir.
through?
They tried to pave it with a backhoe, is what I was told, and you can tell.
Y'all have an estimated cost on that? I know we discussed it
I'm trying
last
to- yeah,
time,
I'm
but
trying to remember exactly what it was. It was on there last time, but I cannot remember. I'll get that to
Well,
you.
last time it was $30,000.
that's what I
That's what I
was,
thought.
Yeah, I was thinking 27, but I can't remember for sure.
it's less than 50 for sure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are they still the only one that has applied for that program? There's a second one?
They are the second.
They were the second one. Okay. Forest Creek was, Snow Creek Forest, okay. Okay. Thank you.
We don't need any action on this.
No, sir.
Just wait.
No, just an update, just to let y'all know. We'll update y'all on the next one.
Okay, you got the ball. Go
All right.
ahead.
Golden Corner Commerce Park, update on the grading for the road and the spec building. We are currently constructing ponds and placing fill removed from the proposed road for the building pad. Weather is getting to be a very big concern with last week and then with this week. So we are diligently working to try to work through the weather on that end, staying hard at it and everything else.
I got a question for Mr. Mulder. Did we close that loan out this week?
No, sir, not yet.
It is supposed to close Friday?
Thank you, Cooper.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we are set to close, and we have been set to close on the property transfer. OEA, because it's a separate entity, although it works as our economic development arm, it's a separate entity. They needed to get their own attorney, so they have their own attorney. Santee Cooper has their own attorney. What they decided would be best is to have a single closing, essentially a single closing, close at the same time. When we did the land transfer and the mortgage closing, essentially the loan closing from Santee Cooper. So that made it more complicated. They've got documents that they're massaging out. I'm not sure where they're at with that because I'm not involved in that aspect, but I know they're close. And I'm going to be talking with the closing attorneys, it's the fourth attorney in the process, and the attorney for OEA about what needs to be done left. So it could have been done in the land transfer part, but we're doing it all at one time to save some money on the title policies. So it'll be very soon. Everything's good with Santee Cooper. They're rolling along. It's just getting the right documents.
Yeah, we've been scheduled twice to close, but when they decided to do the single, it delayed it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm guessing it's just gonna be gravel, because we can't pave until, March or whatever, so it'll just be the gravel. So we're not gonna change anything with the entrance for the time being, just actually have a construction road going back to the pad?
We will cut part of the asphalt at the entrance.
Okay.
To tie down to the entrance road, but yes, sir, it will be the existing entrance, and then we'll gravel, seal off the rest of the roadway
Okay.
from that point, gravel to the side.
Another question. How far are you along with that grading? I mean, you 50%, 75%,
As far as the dirt for the roadway and the ponds that we've had to do, we're at 50%, yes, sir.
50%, okay.
There was a lot more topsoil than what was originally considered.
Have we decided what we're gonna do with that topsoil?
Yes, sir. We're gonna actually start marketing to sell it. We're actually gonna reserve half of it just to make sure there's not a county need in the near future that we may need. but we've got plenty available. We're setting up a contact number for people. We'll market the fill dirt, put a sign on site, and have a separate number just for that particular dirt availability. People will call in, leave a message, and then Rick or another assignee will continue to contact people back once they leave a message and schedule an appointment to go down and actually get loaded up. We're working through some of the accounting issues right now, trying to work with finance. Cash is always a big no-no when you start talking about accepting cash in the field, so we're trying to work through how we're gonna do that. But again, we've decided what we wanna do, we're setting up the mechanisms to do it, we just gotta now work on how we're going to financially account for the cash coming in and where they're gonna pay and how.
Okay.
But that's how we're gonna handle it.
Next item is Treasurer's Office driveway. The update is that we're still working with the DOT to get an encroachment permit. We can still come in and clear and grub for the driveway, which is what the intent is, but I'm looking at pulling more resources to Golden Corner to try to complete that roadway in the allotted time. So that crew may be going to Golden Corner for the next couple, 3 weeks, few weeks.
Do you say that crew, are you referring to taking out those big oaks down there that's in that site? Your crew that does the clearing and grubbing, is that what you're speaking of?
No, they thought process now with the way things are going, having a crew go out there to do some of the pipe work, some of the pond work and things like that, so the grading guys can stay on the grade.
Okay. You wanted to discuss, what we need to streamline our, process of accepting roads. Is that what you'd like to discuss now?
Yes, and working through some of the recommendations that council had for our department, streamlining the process for getting roads accepted was part of that. So we put together a checklist, giving it to you for information. Excuse me, I'm sorry. For y'all to review. I tried to boil it down as much as I can. It's still 4 pages. The ordinance is much more lengthy than that, but these are the main design guidelines for our roadways. And then from this, there'll be, just want to get more of a familiarity on it and a more boiled down version to y'all. This is what we'll be trying to provide to our developers, design engineers. And from this, having further discussions about where we may change, work some different things into the ordinance to make them more user-friendly, more appealing to subdivisions, things of that nature. But this is the basics of that discussion. Whenever we get into K-values, geometric design, things like that, this is where all those discussions come from. This is the design guidelines. This is what, either gives the heartburn or people enjoy the process. And I'm one of those that kind of enjoyed the processes whenever I was doing this type of work. So, but just as information.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes. On these little check marks that y'all have, is there a way, and I know this seems like you're holding hands, but on each line item, whether it's a signature or an initial or something like that, in every page, signed, date that this was checked and whatever else, so we don't get into, well, you were out there on this date, but you're not out there on this date, and these things, I guess, and this comes back in and it's
Yes.
filed and scanned somehow.
Yes.
I just, because
This-
for our issues as council, from what I've seen through our developers, they're like, oh, they were out here doing all this, and they have some, we have some, but there's nothing that meets in the middle, so I just.
Right. Yeah, this would be more of a document that I would use to go through and review plans, preliminary plans on, something Mr. Carroll, on his end would use. So whenever I would go through it, I would reference the checklist, reference the ordinance, and they would they would have a clear description of what they need or what they're lacking.
Yeah, this is a design checklist,
The-
not
Right.
necessarily a procedural checklist. This is something they can have ahead of time, so when they are doing their plans, they hopefully can meet all these, and we don't have to go through the back and forth, and that's a lot of the frustration that we hear, is they'll submit plans, we'll then review it, give them 10 things that didn't meet, they fix those, they give it back. Oh, wait, there's 5 more things you didn't meet, they'll
Correct.
redesign, they'll give it back. This is hopefully intended to answer all these questions up front.
Amen.
If you change something in design and you don't go back and check what that's affected, then you could have further comments. Now, we do every effort, and generally, it doesn't become a problem where we're giving you comments. Whenever we go through it, it is what it is. This is what it doesn't meet, this is what you need to change. The issue comes in whenever you change something and then you don't go back and rework what you've changed. So, you know, that's something that we've tried to work through as we've gone. Have generally done a decent job with that, with working with people on how best to design these roads. On your comment about, you know, getting somebody to sign off on what we do and how we do it, you know, when we go out now, we have a sheet that we do, an inspection log. We sign it, they sign it at the end of every day. It's scanned in for that project in a project folder. We are currently working on a statement to clarify further what steps they've taken in the process. The conversation we had last time, you know, a lot of people get to the end of the road, they get the road paved, and then nothing. It just goes away. No right-of-ways offered, no bonds taken, and there's been times where the bond's been taken, and then it just, nothing else was done. Nobody came back, those kind of things. So we're going to try to do a better job of education, making sure, not, you know, call it hand-holding, that's fine. If that's what they desire, is to turn that road over, and that's what y'all desire, is to take that road, then we need to make sure that they give us a yes or no. Either they want to give that road to the county or they don't. So getting that boiled down, getting that, you know, basic communication out and down and on paper is what we desire to do, because again, we hear it, the 8 years I've been here, I've heard it. You know, and it does get tiresome to me, so I'm sure with all y'all here, it's very tiresome to you. We want to make sure that it is dead clear what their intentions are, what our intentions are, and there is no question afterward that the document trail shows this is what happened. You said no, this is where we are. But, you know, you get into some other issues like that, and nothing's ever going to be cut and dry, but we'll try to make it as best we can.
So if me and Mr. Hart said, hey, we're gonna build a subdivision and we want the roads to be county, is there something that we would initially sign stating, we understand
That's what we're
this?
working on. Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
That's,
We've had a couple of discussions, one of which is a notarized form ahead of time, where it's agreed upon, it's a dual signature form, like a
Perfect.
memo I sent you. The other one is, I think that Mr. Reed had mentioned, it'd be better to even have it indicated on the plat, where there's a signature next to that identifier to be a county road or to be a private road on the plat. So, we're still working through the best case scenario on that. You know, we had talked about doing the notarized form at the end, that all the documents and right-of-ways have been received. It's dual signature, so that both parties have a copy, and, so, I mean, we're still working through some of those procedural things on what's gonna be best. And, you know, we don't want this so problematic and time-consuming and, you know, all these different steps that it makes it worse, right? We don't wanna create red tape, trying to be so careful, but at the same time, you know, we wanna streamline it, but be accountable for what the developer and or the county is intended to do.
it seems to me, and you've been on here longer than I am, that the problematic is when it's all this, hey, we have this, but we don't have this, and we gotta accept this, and that's what I wanna make it easier for the developers. If the intent is there, and these are followed on these inspection dates, and you know you've been out there all the way through, I think it'll be a whole lot easier for all of us that sit up here and that ever becomes in question, or, you know, council that's here 10 years from now, and they're having these questions, hey, y'all said y'all were gonna take these roads, why didn't you take these roads? And there's zero documentation, besides we were out there, and so, and I think y'all done a much, much better job, and I think that's a great step in the right direction. Thank you.
Next item is gonna be the Butler School Road, Westminster, the initial discussion about accepting that road into county maintenance.
That's not mine.
The county was contacted by Habitat for Humanity. It's a Habitat for Humanity subdivision that is in city limits of Westminster. Municipal limits of Westminster. And they are wanting the county to accept that road. Generally, on for our intents and purposes, we maintain roads in the unincorporated parts of the county. We don't maintain roads in the municipal limits of cities. We do have some instances where we do. Eagle Lane in Salem, Short Street here in Walhalla, the courthouse, and then Gillespie Road, which is a road that was annexed in Seneca that has kind of been in limbo about who was gonna take that road. If Seneca was gonna take that road, we keep that road, those kind of things. But basically only three roads, almost about a quarter-mile roads in municipal boundaries that we maintain. Other than that, we do not maintain them. Just wanted to bring this to you, get your feel for it. Just because we don't maintain them doesn't mean that we can't, or generally maintain them, doesn't mean that we can't maintain them. I don't know of anything in the ordinance that prohibits us from maintaining or mutual aid agreements or anything like that for a road such as this for a low-income housing.
I can't speak for the rest of these, but I know the road, I know the area. It used to be a school. The school was torn down. It was given to the Habitat people to build houses, and I think the road itself is still owned by the city of Westminster. And with their finances, I understand why we need to take that road. So, like I say, if there's some more paperwork or what we gotta do to follow up on this.
Yes, sir.
But I'm in favor of going ahead, or at that time, we get all the paperwork done, but taking that road on.
We can further investigate. Obviously, if the city of Westminster owns it, then that would be a discussion between us and them, so we can title search it, see who owns it, see who has ownership of the road, because at a minimum, we're gonna require right of way along the road.
Well, I know that the city of Westminster probably owns the road, because I did the survey on it.
Right.
'Cause,
Yes, sir.
in fact, somebody else designed it, but, I put the pins in on the road itself.
And I believe, and I may be wrong in this, that whenever this road was being built, that Goldie contacted us about, and I believe it was Goldie, forgive me in my mind, but they contacted us about what kind of section we paved with and those kind of things. Not a guarantee that it has adequate base or pavement on it. Obviously, it wasn't inspected by us, but we can certainly check into that, try to do an investigation, get a much more,
How long has that road been under use?
if it's the road that I'm thinking of, I believe it was right before, I believe it was 7 years ago, something like that. If this is the road that I'm thinking of.
There used to be an old schoolhouse there, and they tore the schoolhouse down.
Right.
How long is
So we're not talking about taking
500 feet long.
Butler Street, Butler Court.
About from here to the
I
other
I
end.
can never keep straight, I know it comes off Lucky Street.
It's
Oh,
just-
okay.
But we're
it's
not
got
talking
cul-de-sac.
about taking the entire Butler. We're talking about the road entity going into this subdivision with the cul-de-sac that I believe meets, does it meet our turnaround?
I have not investigated the road as of yet, but we can look at it and see where.
I think it was originally supposed to. That was my only question, because when you talk about Butler School Road, sometimes people will see that as the entire area, and that's a pretty long road going all the way down through there. Butler.
Yes, sir.
But as long as we're talking about Butler School Road, which is what's proposed up here,
Yes, sir.
and that cul-de-sac is close to at least allowing our fire departments to turn around. That's the only, Mr. Chairman, that's the only thing that I would want to make sure is, as long as we could turn around in that cul-de-sac with the fire. Now, I know that is serviced by Westminster Fire, but under our guidelines, the cul-de-sac would at least have to be large enough for us to turn around in. Is that not correct? So if it wasn't, and we accepted the roads, we'd have to immediately go in there and widen that cul-de-sac.
Right now, the fire marshal approves cul-de-sacs. So there has been a back and forth, some wise turnarounds, things of that nature that have been approved from time to time.
Uh-huh.
So that would not be anything from me. That would be something I'd have to get with, Mr. Gibbs and Mr. King about.
As long as we got that, I'm fine with it. I just don't want to go in there and have to, if they say we can't turn our trucks around, or that would be an expense that we would incur to do that. The road, I think, is fine. I just want to make sure that cul-de-sac meets the demand. That's the only concern that I have. Besides that, I'm good with everything else. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll get y'all a copy of the request letter too as well. I guess we can just put this in with the minute, or with the slide show presentation. So we can provide y'all with the letter of the request.
There's no sign off on it yet.
Sign off, what do you mean?
From the fire marshal.
Oh,
And I think
okay, yeah, I
it
just-
looks fine. I just wanna, as long as the fire marshal says I can turn a fire truck around in there, because otherwise, we gonna have to say, hey, we'll accept it, and we're gonna have to,
Yeah, okay.
so.
Mr. Reed?
Sir.
I have a question. You're talking about fire trucks turning around. I always heard that, I mean, that may be between the two, but I always heard that they were concerned about school buses turning around rather than fire trucks.
It's any larger vehicle with that turn rate. Yes, sir. School buses are longer. They have combination vehicles or dump trucks with trailers on them, turning around. All that is a consideration. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's what we try to, that's our recommendation. And again, that'd be something that we recommend when if y'all approve, changing some things in the ordinance, would be putting in a standard 40-foot cul-de-sac, 35, 36, normally it's 36 is what you see, is the design, or is the recommended 40 being the design. 40 is what you want, it's bigger than 30, it gives you that wiggle room. 35 has been a standard that has been used a long time, nothing wrong with 35. It's a foot less than some of the bigger vehicles that are used now, but generally 40 is what we would recommend, a lot more so than a Y at the end of a road. A cul-de-sac would be our preference every time.
Do you know what this one is at all?
I was trying to look at the plat, and it's scanned in, so.
Yeah, that's fine. It's okay.
And it's not a plat, it's actually the plan sheet for the roadway itself, so it's not Mr. Hart's plat. But we'll measure it, and we can certainly get y'all that information, and I apologize for my unpreparedness.
Let's just, push this back until we get all the information.
Yes, sir, and there'd be investigations I'd have to do anyway with y'all's permission, and then getting permission from them to go out there and do some destructive testing on the road to core it and make sure that it has adequate pavement and base.
I think it's about all we have for you, isn't it?
I believe so. That's all I have for y'all.
Mr. Mulder?
Mr. Mulder?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two of you were here during my earlier summation. I tried to fill Mr. Davis in when he came in. As we did in the first meeting, I'd like to, it's your privilege to have a discussion on the goals for next year, to get kind of a jump start instead of meeting in at the strategic planning retreat and then just trying to come up with something on the spot. Go ahead and start engaging the thought process here, begin some early discussions if you have any, so that way we can come back during our strategic planning retreat and I'll compile a list of these items, maybe do some preliminary work to them. And I think that'll help to foster and facilitate some better discussion during the retreat as we look forward to setting our goals. Again, I'd like us to keep focusing in on the community benefit of the direction that we're headed and where we want the county to be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years as we look at those goals. So without further ado, we'll kind of open it up, and if there's any early recommendations, comments, suggestions on some goals for next year.
I have one. Of course, when I say this, it's gonna be old shoes, but Sewer South. I'd like to go ahead, and I know that we've got stuff scheduled for this, but, I'd like for that to be, on the burner.
We can, it's on the current goals list, which is why
Yes, sir.
we're
Yes, sir, I
working the best we
understand.
can. So what we can do is we can certainly, continue that on to the next year until that project's done. As you suggested, our hopes and goals is to submit a grant application to the state of South Carolina in March. We are organizing a second community meeting in the Fair Play area this time at the church down there. I believe I heard Ms. DeRitter mention today that they have secured that church and they're getting everything organized for a second meeting to get the community input on it. So we're moving forward with hopes of submitting an application in March.
Okay.
We're good.
I know we're still working on, my number one still simplified subdivision road checklist. And I know we got it right here and we're close to getting it done. That's, having that finalized by the first part of the year. Appreciate your work in that. Is there a simplified way of identifying who's responsible for a road rather than me picking the phone up and calling you saying, is this our road or is this?
Yes, sir. You can actually go to our GIS site and hit the web maps option. And at the bottom, there is a road search function. So it's a GIS layer that Ms. Lisa Simmering has built. You can actually go in on the left side and do a query search and put in a part of a road name, and it'll pull up the road, select it, and then it'll tell you whether it's P, private, S, E, S, there's different letters, I'm assuming, for our road numbers, whether it's a county or whether it's a state road.
Okay.
State roads all begin with
State roads start with
S-
S-37.
yeah, S-37, but they're all color-coded as well, so you can actually go on the map, click on the road itself, and it'll bring up an information box and tell you whether it's private, county, state, or whatever. So, yeah, you can look that up yourself. I'm more than willing to take your emails, texts, calls, whatever, but yeah, go to oconiesc.com, departments, GIS, accept the I approve and blah, 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 and then you can do the road search. And I think it's the last web map down at the bottom.
The reason why I bring that up, I think it would help with the amount of calls that we get. And I've gone on there a few times and I don't know how it's a simplified process because you actually showed me how to do it a year ago. I just bring it up to state that maybe there is a way for us to talk a little bit more about that in the community of, hey, who owns the road? Because automatically people assume that we do. And then when there is an issue such as a pothole, we're not wasting our time or your time when it's a state. Hey, I've got a hole in my road. It's a state road. How do I fix that? Who do I call?
We're happy to take those calls, take the numbers, find out the issue, those kind of things, and disseminate information. The state does it for us. We do it for the state. We get calls all the time.
Okay.
That are, and Sheila does a fantastic job
Okay.
with knowing that and knowing the folks with the DOT and getting people where they need to be.
Perfect.
Not a problem at all. It's in
But we don't have a online thing I can go on there and state that, hey, so-and-so road, I think it should be widen or there's a pothole. We don't have any kind of
Not
thing.
yet. There are so many different services out there, that are web-based that people will try and sell you. But as part of one of our goals for this year, we're under development of our new website right now. Those are the kind of functionalities we hope to build into, kind of the
Okay.
self-service functionalities. So that maybe a citizen, through the web app on the website can go in and log a GPS point. I just hit a pothole or, whatever. And service requests can be generated from that. We do have, work order requests. People will call in, they'll generate that, but we'd like it to be kind of a self-service. They can log in through the app, hit, problem with a particular road, put in the information, and then it'll notify us that we have a problem. And then we can forward it on to the correct jurisdiction if need be. It'd be nice if it would even come back and let them know that, hey, this is a state road, but your request will be forwarded on over to the state. You can check with them at such and such number and such time if you'd like, something like that. But, those are all those are all the self-service functionalities we're actually be looking at, whether it's an outside independent service that will put a link, to the website, or something that we build in-house as part of the website. But once we get that thing rocking and rolling, those are the kind of things we want to be able to do.
Very good.
He's already got my goal solved. I was trying to come up with, see there,
I want you to
congratulations.
solve mine now. And you've done a good job, but we started at 1992 coming forward with our plats. I'd like to see us start at 1992 and go backwards. Cause I know I come to your office the other day and I had one, it was a 75, page 8. It wasn't on the computer because it fell below, I think she told me 1992. But I would like to see all the A's, those big ones, if we could get those scanned in anyway. And then next year we'll worry about the little red books.
Well, the lady we had working for us unfortunately was gobbled up by, was kind of a part-time employee, but she was gobbled up by DHEC, so she was phenomenal.
She was valuable, yes.
Gosh, she was smoking, getting those things done, so we'll continue to look forward. I misunderstood, I actually thought she had worked her way backwards as well, so that was actually a surprise to me when you came in that day.
Yeah.
As you can probably tell. But we'll see what we can do to come up with a solution to, I don't know if we'll have another one quite like her, but we'll keep trying, because my goal was to take her and send her over to probate and start scanning all his records so it can be available online as well. We'll see if we can build something in next year.
Do our vehicles come into transportation? Replacement plan, that comes in the budget.
Typically a budget finance
Okay,
administrator.
leave it over there.
Yes,
That's what I
but
thought.
that committee is, we meet on February, I guess
We
we
meet
meet on
next
February
month, yeah.
13th, but I don't know if we need to have this discussion in that form. I guess we can. We'll have this one at that form, so you can bring it up then.
Is there anything else?
Well, I know as an example, one of the discussions we've had is a road ordinance, amendment for subdivisions, recognizing that not all subdivisions can be constructed to a rural road standard. We are actually, in the beginning stages of discussing the amendment to bring forward to you, but again, that's a pretty hefty document that may take some time, to make some modifications. There may be some easier fixes we can do in the meantime. It may not be as difficult as I thought, but I know that's a new road ordinance amendment that's gonna be coming for you. Let's see, what else could we?
I get some calls from, I won't necessarily call it subdivision, but, my driveway backs out in this road. Some of them are county roads, and is there a difference of either marking, I guess with our signage, we control the signage on county roads? So if we change that signage or change that speed limit or notifications of that, would that be something that those landowners would have to come up with? And this one's speaking directly over there by Sheep Farm Road, since we changed that whole avenue. There's a cut-through road over there. There's that one, and then there's one over there by Johnson Controls that seems to have about, I don't know, 60 cars on it during a certain period of time when Johnson Controls lets out. And that's a county road, but the speed on that, that's not really a law enforcement thing. If there's something that we can do, for problematic roads, what would you recommend on
I
that?
use that road all the time, so as little as you can.
28 speed bumps, that's what I asked the person, I said, the easiest thing you can do like you do in Greenville, and every road has 12 speed bumps on it, or speed humps as they call them.
I don't think that's
And,
something, I
no,
wouldn't recommend us starting to deploy speed bumps.
I don't recommend that either, and
The
that's,
speed limit on that road is 35 already. You know, you could drop it down to 25 since it's, at least the one I'm referring to, since it's a residential community. But if people aren't following the 35 rule, they're not gonna follow the 25 rule. So it is a law enforcement, issue at that point from a speed deterrent. The road is fairly narrow. The one I use is by Bounty Land Church.
Middle Park.
Yeah, that one that cuts right by Bounty Land Church across from the cemetery off of Highway 28. I know that's one of them you were.
It goes through Tanglewood.
Tanglewood.
Yeah,
You're talking about
Tanglewood, and there's the
yeah.
other one.
Middle Park's right next to church, Tanglewood's down the road.
We-
Generally, and if you like, on some of these issues in the past, if somebody's out in their yard and a car goes by, and I'm not saying that people aren't speeding, because I can't speak to that, but it seems to go a lot faster when you're standing on the road than when you're, so we generally would put out a traffic counter and do a speed study and see if there is actually a speeding problem. See if the majority of people are actually going 35 miles an hour, or if they're going 55 miles an hour.
It'll tell you number of cars, time of day, speed. I mean, it's.
Do we always keep that in use, or it just depends on when we have an issue?
A little bit of both. It depends on what she's a right-of-way technician, so she's doing that sometimes and putting out counters other times and things of that nature. But generally, they are mostly in use. We generally try to put them out every 2 weeks. You can do shorter studies than that. You can do a week. You can do a day like the DOT does. But generally, we have them in use. But
Okay.
so
So
we
if
can
this-
always pick them up after a week and put them somewhere else or something.
So we would have to put this in somebody's yard, like a person could say, hey, you could use my yard, or is it just right away?
Since it's right away, we normally pick a tree and chain it to the tree, and
Yeah.
it's just a box. It's about 8 by 8,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a rubber tube that goes across the road, or a couple of rubber tubes that go across the road, and that's all. Very, very low impact.
Okay.
Generally we ask them if they don't mind to keep an eye on it, because people throw
Like
them
to
in the
borrow 'em.
past, yeah, throw them in the lake.
And this may be something we need to work on with the school board. There are certain roads that I know that we own that are, I would call them a 1.5. They are not a 2-lane road that the school buses use on a regular basis. Is there any kind of planning of developing these roads, making these roads larger? I know my road in particular, and I'm not sitting here saying to pave my road, because if you pave the road, it makes somebody drive faster, but my road is one that's used right by an elementary school, and there's several of them in this county that are that way, that aren't big enough. I mean, if a school bus is on them, it's got 3/4 of the road.
There's a number of factors that are gonna come into play there. It's whether or not we have right of way, whether or not it's prescriptive, whether or not it's, kind of shape it's in. We've got a priority paving list that we use every year. We've gone through, we've used the road assessment software and laser measuring, company that came in to do an evaluation of the conditions of the roads. Off of that road index, we established a need criteria and prioritize those. And that's how we go through, and those that have the right of way on that list, we start marking off with, we've got the $600,000 a year we generate in the road maintenance millage. Actually, it generates a little more than that, but that's what we use for new road pavings and maintenance. You got Steve Fund Committee, so really, it's a level of funding. The more money we get, the more miles we can do, but we can add additional roads to the contract. But we do, we've got a copy of that. We can probably email out to everybody if they want the priority list of the roads that we can go ahead and get out. I know we handed out, I think during one meeting in the year, but we can certainly get that out to you and you can review it and see what roads are on there. But
How many roads do you think are like that in the county that I'd call them a one-half?
Oh, gosh. What do you consider 1.5? Is that a 16-foot road, or is that a 14-foot road? What kind of width would you,
I would say 14.
14? There's a good one. Especially the gravel roads, and especially in spots.
Not gravel, I'm talking about
roads?
like a paved road, like
Not that
more
many
than just
paved.
kinda
Are they
going
that way
through.
because the grass has overtaken the
There's,
shoulder?
there's generally
No,
not that
I mean,
many.
maybe mine's a 16, I don't know, I mean, I just know around several of these elementary schools, there's a lot of problematic areas that where if a school bus is coming, you have to, I mean, so.
You know Muddy Creek Road?
Mud Creek,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's where he's talking about in that area.
Mud Creek, Cedar Lane. I
Those-
mean, I'm
those-
probably, I mean, when they go down, the school bus has no choice but to be down
Those
the
are
middle.
probably 16, and a lot of the time, the issue with some of that is prelims encroaching, ditches being right against the pavement, those kind of things. Why it feels like everything's pulled in, because everything is pulled in on you, and you essentially have to stop because you have nowhere to go otherwise, and it's, 8 foot wide and those sorts of things. That's a small car stop in a parking lot. It's hard to get into. So, those kind of things all lead to those sorts of issues. Resetting ditches, cutting back. The problem that you get into is whenever you have a 16-foot wide road and you're wanting to go to an 18, or if you're wanting to go to the fire standard of 20, then you have absolutely nowhere to go. You have no shoulder to go on, and if you widen the road, you're going in the ditch. If you reset the ditch, then everybody's going to be mad at you because you're getting in their yard and their flower beds and those kind of things. So generally, it's a case-by-case basis. We get I've had a complaint here recently on Bridge Road that I'm going to meet with Ms. Christensen on, and that road's a similar way. It's gravel, but it's narrow in spots, and those are the issues that you run into. Generally, it's easier for us to open things up and make it feel like it's not on top of you than to try to widen things out. And it's a case-by-case basis. It really depends on what it is. So if there's a specific area, I'd be glad to take a look at it.
Yeah.
But yes,
I always say I don't wanna pave because it'll make everybody drive faster, but I've had several two school bus drivers in particular are like, man, this is just, I mean,
I believe you
you can drive,
Road, there's a fence along it.
yeah, so,
Yeah,
Cedar Lane Road to
fence,
Mud Creek, yeah,
And everything's grown up right against that fence, and we come through there and,
it's clear as blue day.
yeah, it may be a different road.
I've even had people drive through my fence before. So, but yeah. Yeah, Weeping Willow, yeah. But yeah, I mean, just, that one is a concern because of the, school, the Fair Oak Elementary School. It is a direct pipeline to it, and, I mean, it's from off of 24 down Cedar Lane, Mud Creek, all the way back into there. I mean, two cars aren't even, I mean,
But if you had an opportunity, I'd be happy to meet you out there and
Yeah,
take a look
be
at it
glad
and
to.
see where, kind of take a look and see the way we look at them, how we would evaluate it.
yeah.
But 16-foot wide, yeah, you would have, because the paving machine runs 8, that kind of thing. So yeah, you would have several 16-foot wide roads, yes, sir.
The parking situation and road in front of Lakeview Assisted Living, that would be my priority. I just would really hate for somebody to wander off there and get hurt.
And then you would.
Thank you.
What else?
Any other business?
Obviously, if we had unlimited money, we could just accomplish it all, but.
No, well,
That's a
that's not the
different
case,
part,
but.
right? That's a different part, so. All right, that's a good start, and, again, this is a good early introduction that hopefully will, facilitate the thought process for you guys as we go over the next few weeks, and then when we come together, the Budget Finance Administration meeting, some more ideas, and you guys can have some good deliberation, when we get to the strategic planning retreat. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Any other business? If not, do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.